Today
Tell me a story,
we're
Annika.
going to be reading from the Pink Fairy book. This is
Yay.
a compilation of fairy tales compiled by Andrew Lang. As we both know, he did a whole series of different color fairy books. The pink one happens to be my favorite, as evidenced by the spine being absolutely destroyed to shit. But it's my favorite because there's a lot of really great ones in here. And the one we're going to do today is called The Snow Queen. And also, as you and I know, the Snow Queen is the original fable upon which Frozen, the Disney movie franchise, is based. Very, very loosely, as we will find out tonight. It is extremely loosely based on it. And one of my favorite parts about the Andrew Lang compilations is all the illustrations. So I will be sharing those with you all.
Hell yes.
Kind of poorly. I'll be holding them up. They're all these beautiful book plates like this.
Man.
So
Is Andrew Lang the illustrator too? Or is there a different illustrator?
That's a good question. I know that his wife helped him with all of these. No, the illustrations are by H.J. Ford. I have no information about who H.J. Ford is, but I do love his illustrations. They're beautiful.
Hell yes.
So that's where we're going. I will preface this by saying I have not reread this recently, just so that I can revisit the magic along with you. And I also know, having read all of these, that there are a fair number of very racist and sexist things in these stories because they are old, and Andrew Lang is old. I should probably date this. These were all, I believe Andrew Lang was compiling these in the 1800s, late 1800s.
Yeah?
Correct me if I'm wrong. Originally published in 1897. So.
Oh, neat. That was pretty early on in the tradition of fairy tale collecting.
Yeah. You would know more about this. You can add information as we go. But I'll just give you an example. The first sentence of the preface says, "All people in the world tell nursery tales to their children. The Japanese tell them, the Chinese, the Red Indians by their campfires, the Eskimo in their dark, dirty huts, and it only gets worse from there." And we will not read on. So I'm pretty sure that the Snow Queen is pretty much free of most of these things.
Good.
Any problematic references, because it does take place in what is supposed to be, I think, a Scandinavian country, or
Sounds right.
There's
snow.
It's originally a Hans Christian Andersen story, so
presumably,
okay.
He was Dutch.
I think you're right. It was written in German, apparently, according to this. But given that all the characters in this are white, I think we're pretty safe from racism. But if in the future, I will give this disclaimer every time, but if in the future we read one that does have some problematic stuff in it, I'm just going to make up other words for things because I have no interest in saying racist names or describing racist characters. That's not what the vibe of this is. I'm interested
I think we can give that. I think we can give that a hard pass.
Exactly, but I think it's worth mentioning because these are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what it is. If you get yourself a copy of any one of these color books, you should expect to find some problematic stuff in it.
Yeah.
But
also, misogyny in particular is pretty heavily used in the fairy tale tradition as a whole. That's kind of where the wicked stepmother trope comes from. Women bad.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that. Some more overt than others, but that's a big part of that tradition. That women will come in to a perfectly innocent man's life and just screw everything up.
Oh yeah, we both know this from telling each other stories over the years.
Of course, not universal. Sometimes the fathers do fucked up things, like cut off their daughter's hands. Oopsie.
There you go. We might have to do that one with is that the one with the salt circle and behind the barn? That one? That's a great one. I love when you tell that story.
That's a good one.
Maybe we'll do that in the future. Also, we will be trading off telling stories. I will be reading them because I don't have them in my brain. And Alyssa might be just telling stories off the top of her head because she has them.
Alyssa will be simply telling stories. Quick side note before you start telling.
Yes.
My Band-Aid has Togepi on it. He's a little egg boy.
Oh my god, I love him. He's adorable. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. You're welcome.
That's very important. I'm also going to be drinking because it's 8 o'clock and it's a Tuesday and I have a very long
I'm going to be drinking too. It's water though.
That's cool. I have a nice Saranac Pale Ale brewed in upstate New York, about 50 miles from where I live.
Golly.
So that's fun. All right.
Regale me.
Shall we get going on the Snow Queen? I'll show you the illustration on the second page first. This is the Hobgoblin, who will
That's a funny little guy.
In like 2 seconds, and the caption says the Hobgoblin left till his sides ached, and I just think he's really cute.
What a funny little guy.
I think he's really cute. All right,
it's just a little guy.
So, the Snow Queen, originally by Hans Christian Andersen, translated from the German, and the basis of Frozen. There was once a dreadfully wicked hobgoblin, as evidenced here. One day he was in capital spirits because he made a looking glass which reflected everything that was good and beautiful in such a way that it dwindled almost to nothing, but anything that was bad and ugly stood out very clearly and looked much worse. The most beautiful landscapes looked like boiled spinach, and the best people looked repulsive or seemed to stand on their heads with no bodies. Their faces were so changed that they could not be recognized, and if anyone had a freckle, you might be sure it would be spread over the nose and mouth. That was the best of it, said the hobgoblin. But one day the looking glass was dropped. What a tragedy. And it broke into 1,000,000 billion and more pieces. And now
that's too many.
It's just so many pieces for one year.
Just putting this out there, that's too many pieces.
But one day, the looking glass was dropped and it broke. And now came the greatest misfortune of all, for each of the pieces was hardly as large as a grain of sand, and they flew about all over the world, and if anyone had a bit in his eye, there it stayed, and then he would see everything awry, or else could only see the bad sides of a case. For every tiny splinter of the glass possessed the same power that the whole glass had. This, side note, is why I was terrified of glass as a child, because I read this and I was like, oh my god, if I get glass in my eye, not only will it hurt, I will see everything terribly. I was really scared.
Oh no.
This made me really scared of glass. Some people got a splinter in their hearts, and that was dreadful, for then it began to turn into a lump of ice. Are you seeing the references to Frozen? The hobgoblin laughed.
Hans Christian Andersen, man.
Wait, what?
Oh, I'm simply complimenting Hans Christian Andersen.
Sorry. I thought
this idea is really cool.
I thought you were calling me out for saying that this is referencing Frozen by accident instead.
No.
You know, I meant the other way around. It is.
Cool. I know. I got you.
It's a good one. The hobgoblin laughed till his sides ached, but still the tiny bits of glass flew about. And now we will hear all about it. Thank you for telling us that. What if it didn't say that and the story just ended? They're like, yeah, so like that's it. It's one page.
The end. Maybe they'd end up like an Aesop's fable.
Good.
The moral of this story is never believe your eyes.
And also watch out for glass, which is just a good...
Also watch out for glass.
Good idea, anyway.
Yeah, don't get glass in your eye. Ouch.
In a large town, where there were so many people in houses, there was not room enough for everybody to have gardens, lived 2 poor children. They were not brother and sister, but they loved each other just as much as if they were. Their parents lived opposite one another in 2 attics, and out on the leads they had put 2 boxes full of flowers. There were sweet peas in it and 2 rose trees which grew beautifully, and in summer the 2 children were allowed to take their little chairs and sit out under the roses. Then they had splendid games.
Ooh.
In the winter, They could not do this, but then they put hot pennies against the frozen window panes and made round holes to look at each other through. Because you had to take the hot pennies. You couldn't just go.
No.
Here's what you gotta do. You gotta get 2 pennies. You gotta get 2 pennies.
Get them real hot.
And you put them under your armpits, and then you just hold them there for a bit. And then you shove them on the glass, and then you wait, and then you plunk them off, and then you go, and then your friends gotta do the same. Thank you. In the winter, they could not do this. But then they put, no wait, sorry, I just read that. His name was Kay, and hers was Gerda. Outside, it was snowing fast. Those are the white bees swarming, said the old grandmother, who had a sight problem. No, but I made that up.
Are there white bees, oh entomologist?
Kind of. I mean, not like white. Maybe. Probably. Not that I can think of off the top of my head. But they're talking about the snow, so it's not that. Have they also a queen bee? Asked the little boy. For he knew that the real bees have one. That is correct. Good job, Kay. To be
Smart
sure,
kid.
Said the grandmother. She flies wherever they swarm the thickest. She is larger than any of them and never stays upon the earth, but flies again up into the black clouds. Often at midnight she flies through the streets and peeps in at all the windows, and then they freeze in such pretty patterns and look like flowers. Yes, we have seen that, said both children. They knew that it was true. Absolutely, I've done seen that. Can the Snow Queen come in here? Asked the little girl. Just let her, cried the boy. I would put her on the stove and melt her.
That's fucked up.
But the grandmother stroked his hair and told some more stories. In the evening, when little Kay was going to bed, he jumped on the chair by the window and looked through the little hole. A few snowflakes were falling outside, and one of them, the largest, lay on the edge of one of the window boxes. The snowflake grew larger and larger till it took the form of a maiden dressed in finest white gauze. And we have an illustration of said maiden.
Pretty lady.
Very lovely. She was so beautiful and dainty, but all of ice. Hard, bright ice. Still, she was alive. Her eyes glittered like 2 clear stars, but there was no rest or peace in them. She nodded at the window and beckoned with her hand. The little boy was frightened and sprang down from the chair. It seemed as if a great white bird had flown past the window. The next day there was a harder frost than before. Then came the spring, and then the summer, when the roses grew and smelt more beautifully than ever. You know, he saw the lady,
just moving on from that,
lady at the window, and then it was spring, and then it was summer, and there was some roses.
She wasn't creepy. Pretty ladies can't be creepy.
She was scary.
But she was pretty.
I mean, but she was pretty, so like that counts more than anything else, really.
Yeah.
Kay and Gerda were looking at one of their picture books. The clock in the great church tower had just struck 5 when Kay exclaimed, "Oh, something has stung my heart and I've got something in my eye." The little girl threw her arms around his neck. He winked hard with both his eyes. No, she could see nothing in them. "I think it is gone now," said he. But it had not gone. It was one... What do you think it was, boys and girls? It was one of
Probably a snowflake.
Yeah. That's what it was. End of story. It was one of the tiny splinters of the glass of the magic mirror, which we have heard about before, that turned everything great and good in it, reflected in it, small and ugly. And poor Kay had also a splinter in his heart, and it began to change into a lump of ice. It did not hurt him at all, but the splinter was there all the same. "Why are you crying?" he asked. "It makes you look so ugly. There's nothing the matter with me. Just look, that rose is all slug-eaten, and this one is stunted. What ugly roses they are." And he began to pull them to pieces. "Kay, what are you doing?" cried the little girl. And when he saw how frightened she was, he pulled off another rose and ran in at his window, away from dear little Gerda. When she came later on with the picture book, he said that it was only fit for babies, and when his grandmother told him stories, he was always interrupting with, "But..." And then he would get behind her and put on her spectacles and speak just as she did. This he did very well, and everybody laughed. Very soon he could imitate the way all the people in the street walked and talked. His games were now quite different. On a winter's day, he would take a burning glass and hold it out in his blue coat and let the snowflakes fall on it. Look in the glass, Gerda. Just see how regular they are. They are much more interesting than real flowers. Each is perfect. They're all made according to rule. If only they did not melt. This just sounds like puberty. This just sounds like puberty.
No.
One morning. Do you want me to stop? One morning, Kay came out with his warm gloves on and his little sledge hung over his shoulder. He shouted to Gerda, "I'm going to the marketplace to play with the other boys." And away he went. In the marketplace, the boldest boys used often to fasten their sledges to the carts of the farmers, and then they got a good ride. Honestly, I've heard this described in a lot of old fairy tales, and I really want to do it. I mean, I guess it's the same as attaching your sled to a car, but that's quite a bit more dangerous than attaching your sled to a horse-drawn carriage. I just really want to do that.
It sounds fun.
It sounds really fun.
It's like a roll-top car for the old days.
A sled is.
That's what they're called, right? A roll-top.
A convertible.
I'm thinking of a roll-top desk.
Oh, Lord.
Hello, it's me. I'm a real person. Continue.
When they were in the middle of their games, there drove into the square a large sledge, all white, and in it sat a figure dressed in a rough white fur pelisse with a white fur cap on it. The sledge drove twice round the square, and Kay fastened his little sledge behind it and drove off. It went quicker and quicker into the next street. The driver turned round and nodded to Kay in a friendly way, as if they had known each other before. Every time that Kay tried to unfasten his sledge, the driver nodded again, and Kay sat still once more. Then they drove out of the town, and the snow began to fall so thickly the little boy could not see his hand before him, and on they went. He quickly unfastened the cord to get loose from the big sledge, but it was of no use. His little sledge hung on fast, and it went on like the wind. Then he cried out, but nobody heard him. He was dreadfully frightened. The snowflakes grew larger and larger till they looked like great white birds. All at once they flew aside, and the large sledge stood still, and the figure who was driving stood up. The fur cloak and cap were all of snow. It was a lady, tall and slim and glittering. It was the Snow Queen.
Pretty lady.
It's the Snow Queen, oh my god. And she had a lot of that body glitter, that roll-on stuff that comes in a little tube with a ball on top. She was just like, girl, get it on. We have come at a good rate, she said, but you are almost frozen. Creep in under my cloak. That's not creepy or predatory. And she set him close to her in the sledge and drew the cloak over him. He's
cold.
He felt as though he were sinking into a snowdrift. Are you cold now? She asked, and kissed his forehead. The kiss was cold as ice and reached down to his heart, which was already half a lump of ice.
No.
My sledge! Don't forget my sledge! He thought of that first, and it was fastened to one of the white birds who flew behind with the sledge on its back. The Snow Queen kissed Kay again, and then he forgot all about little Gerda, his grandmother, and everybody at home. Now I must not kiss you any more, she said, or else I shall kiss you to death. Good. Then away they
flew. Put
Madam,
him back!
Please cool it with the kisses.
Put him back!
Or don't cool it with the kisses.
No.
Then away they flew over forests and lakes, over sea and land. Round them whistled the cold wind, the wolves howled, and the snow hissed. Over them flew the black, shrieking crows. But high up the moon shone large and bright, and thus Kay passed the long winter night. In the day he slept at the Snow Queen's feet. But what happened to little Gerda when Kay did not come back? What had become of him? Nobody knew. The other boys told how they had seen him fasten his sledge onto a large one which had driven out of the town gate. Gerda cried a great deal. The winter was long and dark to her. Then the spring came, with warm sunshine. I will go and look for Kay, said Gerda, the fucking 6-year-old. Actually, I don't know if she's 6. Does it say how old they are?
She can't be very old.
I always picture her as being like around 8, mostly because that's how old they look in the pictures. I think they're supposed to be around 8 years old. So anyway, she's like, I'm gonna go. You know what, Grandma? Peace.
No.
So she went down to the river.
You're only a baby.
She went down to the river and got into a little boat that was there. You know. Presently, the stream began to carry it away. So she's not even rowing. She's just like, I'm gonna pop myself in a boat, see where I freaking go.
Gerda!
Perhaps the river will take me to Kay, thought Gerda. Bad idea. She glided down past trees and fields till she came to a large cherry garden, in which stood a little house with strange red and blue windows and a straw roof. Before the door stood 2 wooden soldiers who were shouldering arms. Gerda called to them, but they naturally did not answer. She's talking to fucking wood statues. This is a sign you shouldn't be going out on your own. The river
She's only a baby.
Gerda called out still louder, and there came out of the house a very old woman. She leant upon a crutch, and she wore a large sun hat which was painted with the most beautiful flowers. You poor little girl, said the old woman. And then she stepped into the water, brought the boat in close with her crutch, and lifted little Gerda out. And now come and tell me who you are and how you came here, she said. Then Gerda told her everything, and asked her if she had seen Kay. But she said he had not passed that way yet, but he would soon come. She told Gerda not to be sad, and that she should stay with her and take care of the cherry trees and flowers, which were better than any picture book, as they could each tell a story. She then took Gerda's hand and led her into the little house and shut the door. The windows were very high, and the panes were red, blue, and yellow, so that the light came through in curious colors. On the table were the most delicious cherries, and the old woman let Gerda eat as many as she liked, while she combed her hair with a gold comb as she ate. The beautiful sunny hair rippled and shone around the dear little face, which was so soft and sweet. I have always longed to have a dear little girl just like you, and you shall see how happy we will be together. Red flag! And as she combed Gerda's hair, Gerda thought less and less about Kay, for the old woman was a witch! Who could have ever seen that? But not a wicked witch.
Why is it always...
It's the old lady in a house with the friggin' windows. It's always a witch. But
always a witch. Always with the witches.
It's always a witch. My leg's falling asleep. I gotta sleep. Okay. But not a wicked witch. For she only enchanted now and then to amuse herself, and she did want to keep little Gerda very much. So she went into the garden and waved her stick over all the rose bushes and blossoms and all. They sank down into the black earth, and no one could see where they had been. The old woman was afraid that if Gerda saw the roses, she would begin to think about her own, and then would remember Kay and run away. Because there's nothing else that would remind her of Kay. It's only the roses. Then
Why the coercion, ma'am?
Then she led Gerda out into the garden. How glorious it was, and how lovely scents filled the air. All the flowers you can think of blossomed there all the year round. Gerda jumped for joy and played there till the sun set behind the tall cherry trees, and then she slept in a beautiful bed with red silk pillows filled with violets. That does not sound very comfortable. Like, silk pillows, you're supposed to have those because, like, it's good for your hair and your hair won't break. But, like, filled with violets? That does not sound very comfortable.
I bet it's super comfortable, and I think you're a fool.
All right. Well, she did sleep soundly and dreamed as a queen does on her wedding day. Well, damn. I hope she doesn't dream like someone on their wedding day, because that's going to be... She's 8 years old.
It's a strange metaphor. As a queen on her wedding day.
I feel like I wouldn't sleep very well on my wedding day.
So, wedding day as in before or after?
It's unclear.
Hans Christian?
Hans Christian Andersen, what are you talking about? Excuse me, sir. Knock, knock. What? The next day, she played again with the flowers in the warm sunshine. And so many days passed by. Gerda knew every flower, but although there were so many, it seemed to her as if one were not there, though she could not remember which. She was looking one day at the old woman's sun hat, which had the painted flowers on it, and there she saw a rose. The witch had forgotten to make that vanish when she made the other roses disappear under the earth. It is so difficult to think of everything. Honestly, most relatable line in this whole book story.
Yeah, it's true.
It is so difficult to think of everything. That's why I have like 4 different planners.
It is.
Why, there are no roses here, cried Gerda. And she hunted amongst all the flowers, but not one was to be found. Then she sat down and cried.
Honey!
But her tears fell just on the spot where a rose bush had sunk. And when her warm tears watered the earth, the bush came up in full bloom just as it had before. Gerda
How many tears?
A lot. Faucets. Just straight water, like a watering can at her eyes.
That's not healthy.
I don't know. Seems good to me. I've watched a lot of cartoons. That's normal.
I don't know. I feel like she should get like a Gatorade or something. Replenish her electrolytes.
I mean, don't worry. She goes and she kisses the roses and thought of the lovely roses at home. And with them came the thought of little Kay. So, like, the witch was, like, spot on with the roses thing.
Yeah.
Oh, what have I been doing? Said the little girl. I wanted to look for Kay. That's me every time I walk into a room. I'm like, what was I here for? What was I?
Yeah. And then you see a rose and you're like,
and I see a rose and I'm like, shit. I'm meant to go do the dishes.
Oh, yes, my missing relative. Where?
Super overheating because I've forgotten to put my little desk underneath it, which is also the Insect Discover Eyewitness book.
I thought you were like doing a bit because you're like, I've forgotten the dishes.
No, my computer is just, the fan has just started to become really loud, and I realize it's because it's sitting on a pillow. That's not it. Don't do that.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that. What's wrong with you?
I think this is a good moment to hydrate. Alcohol is not a hydration. Source of hydration.
That's a diuretic.
That's the word.
I'm an English major.
I'm not in college.
I know. That's why I'm here to educate you.
Thank you. What would I do without you? Alright, let's see. What have I been doing? I wanted to look for Kay. She ran to the end of the garden. The gate was shut, but she pushed against the rusty lock so that it came open. She ran out with her little bare feet. No one came after her. At last, she could not run any longer, and she sat down on a large stone. I mean, she's like 8.
Yeah, but why didn't the witch follow her?
She's really old. She can't run like that.
Okay, continue.
So she sits down on a large stone. When she looked around, she saw that the summer was over. It was late autumn. It had not changed in the beautiful garden, where there were sunshine and flowers all the year round. Oh dear, how late I have made myself, said Gerda. It's autumn already. I cannot rest. And she sprang up to run on. Oh, how tired and sore her little feet grew, and it became colder and colder. She had to rest again, and there on the snow in front of her was a large crow. It had been looking at her for some time, and it nodded its head and said, "Caw, caw, good day."
Oh my god.
That was more parrot than crow, but I don't know how crow talks.
I would imitate it, but I have neighbors, so I won't.
Should I do a different voice? Caw, caw, good day.
No, the first one was better.
Okay. Then it asked the little girl.
At least it's bird-like.
Thank you. I'm not known for my voice acting. Actually, I kind of am.
Well, yeah.
So, alright. Whatever. I don't know. I've not practiced bird voices.
It's fine.
I'm sorry.
Well, practice for next time. Go on.
Oh, shit. Alright, I got hold of it. Then it asked the little girl why she was alone in the world. That's what I ask someone when I meet them. I'm like, hey, why are you alone in the world? That's what the dating apps ask me. They're like, hey, why are you alone?
Why are you alone in the world?
My interests include insects and knowing all the words to Hamilton. And the app's like, oh, that's why you're alone.
Oh my god. Insects are fine, but move on.
I scared off a man with my love of insects. That's another story.
Yeah, but I think... Yeah, but he's the problem, not you.
I mean, yes, obviously. But I think that's a little more off-putting than Hamilton. People can deal with Hamilton. Although
I can't deal with
maybe
Hamilton.
not my version of Hamilton.
That frightens me.
Don't even worry about it. The crow's asking her why she's alone in the world.
Mm-hmm.
She told the crow her story and asked if he had seen Kay. The crow nodded very thoughtfully and said, "It might be. It might be." It's really parrot-like, I'm sorry. But we're stuck with it now. "What? Do you think you have?" cried the little girl, and she almost squeezed the crow to death as she kissed him.
Honey.
Gently, gently, said the crow. I think it might be little Kay, but now he has forgotten you for the princess.
No.
Does he live with a princess? asked Gerda. Yes, listen, said the crow. Then he told her all he knew. In the kingdom in which we are now sitting. This is turning into old man. Hang on, I gotta recalibrate back to very.
The crow can be an old man.
But he's not. We have to save the old man voice. In the kingdom in which we are sitting lives a princess who is dreadfully clever. She has read all the newspapers in the world and has forgotten them again. She is as clever as that. The other day she came to the throne, and that is not so pleasant as people think. Then she began to say, why should I not marry? But she wanted a husband who could answer when he was spoken to, not one who would stand up stiffly and look respectable. That would be too dull. When she told all the court ladies, they were delighted. You can believe every word I say, said the crow. I have a tame sweetheart in the palace, and she tells me everything. Of course, his sweetheart...
That's cute, but...
Of course, his
is
sweetheart...
this going where...
Duh.
glad for the clarification.
I had to add that in halfway through the story.
I mean, I would hope she's a crow.
The newspapers came out next morning with a border of hearts round it. And the princess's monogram... This was written in 1897. And the princess's monogram on it. And inside, you could read, female 21, good looks, nice education.
No.
Every good-looking young man might come into the palace and speak to the princess, and whoever should speak
Only
loud
if you're good-looking, though.
Only the good-looking lads. And whoever should speak loud enough to be heard would be well-fed and looked after. And the one who spoke best...
Wait, so...
You got to go into the palace, and you have to scream...
So it's based on... She's courting based on volume?
Yes. Isn't this how it does? Look. Some people come and they're like, does this shoe fit on your foot? Who's got the smallest feet? I got a foot thing. Other people are like, man, I just want you to be really fucking loud.
Really loud.
She's got her tastes.
I guess that's valid.
Don't kink shame. Whoever should speak loud enough to be heard would be well fed and looked after, and the one who spoke best should become the princess's husband. Indeed, said the crow. You can quite believe me. It is as true as that I'm sitting here. Young men came in streams. This is a lot of dialogue for this voice. Young men came in streams, and there was such a crowding and a mixing together. But nothing came of it on the first, nor on the second day. They could all speak quite well when they were in the street, but as soon as they came inside the palace door and saw the guards in silver, and upstairs the footmen in gold, and the great hall all lighted up, then their wits left them. And when they stood in front of the throne, where the princess was sitting, then they could not think of anything to say, except to repeat the last word she had spoken, and she did not much care to hear that again. It seemed as if they were walking in their sleep, until they came out into the street again, when they could speak once more. There was a row stretching from the gate of the town up to the castle. They were hungry and thirsty, but in the palace they did not even get a glass of water. A few of the cleverest...
Aw, that's not very nice.
A few of the cleverest had brought some slices of bread and butter with them, but they did not share them with their neighbor, for they thought, if he looks hungry, the princess will not take him. But what about Kay? Asked Gerda. When did he come? Was he in the crowd? Wait a bit, we are coming to him. On the third day, a little figure came without horse or carriage and walked jauntily up to the palace. His eyes shone as yours do. He had lovely curling hair, but quite poor clothes. That was Kay! Cried Gerda with delight. Yes, that's the only description you need. There's no one else that fits
That's
that
a kid!
Oh, then I have found him! And she clapped her hands. He had a little bundle on his back, said the crow. No, it must have been his skates, for he went away with his skates. Very likely, said the crow. I did not see for certain, but I know this from my sweetheart, that when he came to the palace door and saw the royal guards in silver, and on the stairs the footmen in gold,
He said he was not the least bit put out. He nodded to them, saying, "It must be rather dull, standing on the stairs. I would rather go inside." The hall was blazed with lights. Councillors and ambassadors were walking about in noiseless shoes, carrying gold dishes. That's what happens in a palace. It was enough to make one nervous.
I get very anxious about quiet men carrying gold plates. That's like peak anxiety for me.
Oh no, this is why she wants a loud man. She's nervous because like, there's so many quiet men. The
palace is so quiet. They all wear these quiet shoes. These gold plates. But his boots creaked dreadfully loud, but he was not frightened. That must be Kay, said Gerda. His shoes are so fucking loud. I know he had new boots on. I've heard them creaking in his grandmother's room.
They did creak, certainly, said the crow. Nobody else's shoes creak. And not one, I'm afraid.
It's just him.
Up he went to the princess, who was sitting on a large pearl, as round as a spinning wheel. All the ladies in waiting were standing round.
She was sitting on a pearl?
Yeah, duh, look, like that. Look at that giant fucking pearl. What kind of clam was that in? Who could say? She's sitting on a pearl.
A biggin.
Yeah.
A real big clam.
The nearer they stood to the door, the prouder they were. That's the ladies in waiting.
It must have been dreadful, said little Gerda. And Kay did win the princess?
I heard from my tame sweetheart that he was merry and quick-witted. He had not come to woo, he said, but to listen to the princess's wisdom. And the end of it was that they fell in love with each other.
That's a baby.
Oh yes, that was Kay, said Gerda. He was so clever. He could do sums with fractions. Oh, do lead me to the palace. He could do math with fractions, Alyssa. He's so smart.
That's a kid.
He's so smart. We don't know how old the princess is.
There was an illustration. She's an adult woman.
I mean, definitely. Definitely. He looks maybe 12 in this picture. Don't even worry about it, though.
I'm worried about it. I
mean, at this point, we don't actually know this is Kay, so don't worry about it too much.
Okay.
Oh, do lead me to the palace, says Gerda.
That's easily said, answered the crow. But how are we to manage that? I must talk it over with my tame sweetheart. She may be able to advise us, for I must tell you that a little girl like you could never get permission to enter it.
Yes, I will get it, said Gerda. When Kay hears that I am there, he will come out at once and fetch me.
Wait for me by the railings,
said the crow, and he nodded his head and flew away. It was late in the evening when he came back.
Caw,
he said.
I am to give you her love, and here is a little roll for you. She took it out of
a what? Wait, a what?
A roll. Like a bread roll?
Oh, a roll.
Sorry.
I thought you said a wall, and I'm like, what?
I brought you this palace wall. It's also made of gold.
So it's a little difficult to enunciate in this voice. I didn't really expect to have to do this voice like so much. I forgot that the crow is like a continuing character.
That's a verbose crow.
It's a very verbose crow.
You cannot come into the palace. The guards in silver and the footmen in gold would not allow it. But don't cry, you shall get in all right. My sweetheart knows a little backstairs, which leads to the sleeping room, and she knows where to find the key.
They went into the garden, and when the lights in the palace were put out one after the other, the crow led Gerda to a back door. Oh, how Gerda's heart beat with anxiety and longing. It seemed as if she were going to do something wrong, but she only wanted to know if it were little Kay. Yes, it must be. She remembered so well his clever eyes, his curly hair. She could see him smiling as he did when they were at home under the rose trees. He would be so pleased to see her and to hear how they were all at home. To hear...
Not that she would know. She hasn't been home in months.
It's been like multiple seasons.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Now they were on the stairs. A little lamp was burning, and on the landing stood the tame crow. She put her head on one side and looked at Gerda, who bowed as her grandmother had taught her. My betrothed has told me... This is the fancy court crow. My betrothed...
Oh, the tame sweetheart?
The tame sweetheart. My betrothed has told me many nice things about you, dear young lady, she said. Will you take the lamp while I go in front? How is this crow holding a lamp? We go this way so as to reach no one.
In its little talons?
It's walking.
Is it hopping?
Wait, is the crow's walking?
I mean, I don't think they're flying.
Well,
It doesn't say. Whatever. There's some wild things coming up, so don't even worry. This is the least of our problems. Is how the crows are.
a talking crow I can accept, but a crow that isn't flying.
That's unbelievable.
You think a crow would land?
No, they are constantly in flight. All right, so the crow asked.
Listen, Hans Christian Andersen, let me teach you about this fun little thing called cognitive dissonance.
Let me teach you about crow locomotion. Alright, they're going this way so as to avoid meeting people. Through beautiful rooms they came to the sleeping room. The sleeping room, not the bed. It's
The bedroom?
No, it's the sleeping room.
Oh, this... What am I talking about?
In the middle of it, hung on a thick rod of gold, were 2 beds shaped like lilies. Wow, this
Cute.
is wild. Wait a minute. I just got a picture of this in the brain. There's a gold rod, and hanging on the gold rod were 2 beds shaped like lilies. So like hammocks.
Wait, the beds are hanging?
The beds are hanging on the gold rod.
Oh, so they're like kind of like hammocks.
Thank you for repeating what I just said.
I didn't hear you.
Who are you listening to?
I'm so sorry.
Who are you listening to?
I was distorted.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. So anyway, there's 2 beds shaped like lilies, one all white, in which lay the princess, and the other red, in which Gerda hoped to find Kay. She pushed aside the curtain and saw a brown neck. Oh, it was Kay. Your brown neck.
She recognizes his neck?
She called out his name, holding the lamp toward him. He woke up, turned his head, and it was not Kay! Oh! It was only his neck that was like Kay's.
Does it really say that?
Yes! But he was young and handsome. The princess sat up in her lily bed and asked
Oh my
who was
fucking
there.
god. That's a very Kay-like, oh my, your neck, I'm sorry, sir, your neck looks just like my brother.
I just saw your neck and I thought you're my brother.
I broke into your house because I thought...
I mean, if I saw someone on the street and their neck looked like your neck, the first thing I would think is, that's definitely my sister. And then I'd go up to them and tap them, and they'd be like, hello, and I'd be like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. Your neck looks like exactly like my sister's. That is so
Oh my
creepy.
god, your neck looks so...
Your neck looked really familiar. I was staring at it. Why was I doing that? I don't know.
Read on. Mm-hmm.
The princess sat up in her lily bed and asked who was there, as one would. Then Gerda cried and told her story and all that the crows had done. You poor child, said the prince and princess, and they praised the crows.
Are they witches too?
No. And said they were not angry with them, but that they must not do it again. Now they should have a reward. Would you like to fly away free, said the princess, or will you have a permanent place as court crows with what you can get in the kitchen?
Court crows.
And both crows bowed and asked for a permanent appointment. For they thought of
That's
their
so
old
cute.
age. For they thought of their old age. They're like, yeah, I should really get started on a 401k, maybe a Roth. Like, I don't know, there's pros and cons. Like, do we
Yeah,
want...
I mean, flying free is good and all, but, you know, we want to have kids someday, and they're not going to be around forever, and we don't want to tie them down.
I know.
We want to be looked after when we get decrepit. You know, a crow's life ain't that long. We want kitchen access.
How long do crows live? I think it's a pretty long-lived
What
bird.
is the average lifespan of a crow?
I'm gonna guess like 30 years.
50. So there's three crows listed. American crow 7 to 8 years. Common raven 10 to 15 years. Australian raven 22 years.
Damn, I was off.
Wait, let me see European crow, because this is a European crow.
Yeah.
4 years. Oh, that's a pet. That's a pet carrying crow. Nope.
I mean, how about the ravens at the tower? Those live for like decades.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about crows. Very decidedly
raven.
talking about crows.
I don't know what the difference is. At the Tower of London. Let's see. 40 years.
Wow. Okay, that's
because they're kept in captivity.
I was thinking.
So
about
the average lifespan of like a wild raven is about 15 years, but the Tower of London ravens, which are
very well,
I guess not technically pets, but yeah, pampered ravens, 40 years.
Okay.
So the crows are right to think of their old age because they will not reach it, perhaps, if they fly off into the winter.
That's fair. Okay, sorry, I'm just turning.
Corvids are very smart.
I mean, yes.
They can solve all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
I can't solve problems. I gotta hand it to them.
I mean, have you seen our lives? Like, clearly, we should put corvids in charge of our lives. Oh my god! All right, shall we? Now that we've figured out how long these birds live.
Yes, go on.
And they've gotten permanent appointments in the court.
Mm-hmm.
And they put Gerda to bed, and she folded her hands, thinking as she fell asleep, "How good people and animals are to me." That's very true. She did just get in a boat and float away, and she's done pretty well for herself.
Yeah.
The next day she was dressed from head to toe in silk and satin. They wanted her to stay on in the palace, but she begged for a little carriage and a horse and a pair of shoes so that she might go out again into the world to look for Kay. They gave her a muff as well as some shoes. She was warmly dressed, and when she was ready, there in front of the door stood a coach of pure gold, and a coachman, footman, and postilions with gold crowns on. Gold is not a very structurally sound metal to be making a whole carriage out of, but, like, maybe it's gold-plated.
Yeah, it's probably gilded.
It did say pure gold, so I don't know about that one. The prince and
princess. Maybe it's a different kind of gold.
Right.
Like the kind that's not gold.
Fool's gold?
No. Gold. Pure gold. What? But the sort of gold that isn't actually fairy tale gold.
What? Okay, made up gold. Is what you're
Fairy tales are real,
fake
Annika.
Gold. Oh, I'm sorry.
Fairy tales are real.
The prince and princess helped her into the carriage and wished her good luck. "Goodbye, goodbye," cried the prince and princess, and little Gerda cried, and the crow cried, and I cried, for the crow's voice is going on hiatus for a little bit. Oh,
sad.
There's more birds on the next page. With another bird voice.
Thank God.
When he said goodbye, he flew onto a tree and waved his black wings as long as the carriage, which shone like the sun, was in sight. They came at last to a dark wood, but the coach lit it up like a torch. When the robbers saw it, they rushed out, exclaiming, "Gold! Gold!"
What?
The robbers, you know.
There weren't any robbers established.
The robbers saw it. You are expected to know. The robbers.
Hans, you gotta set these things up.
They seized the horses, killed the coachman, footmen, and postilions, and dragged Gerda out of the carriage. "She is plump and tender. I will eat her," said the old robber queen, and she drew her long knife, which glittered horribly. This is a long story.
What?
Disney had a lot of material to work with here, and they took none of it, pretty much. Really disappointing. "She's plump and tender, I will eat her," said the robber queen, because that's a thing, too. Everyone's got a queen.
Uh-huh.
"You shall not kill her."
The robber queen.
"You shall not kill her," cried her little... That's going to be really obnoxious. I'm not going to do that.
Don't do that.
"You shall not kill her," cried her little daughter. "She shall play with me. She shall give me her muff and her beautiful dress, and she shall sleep in my bed."
Why is she like Southern?
She just is. The little robber girl was as big as Gerda, but was stronger, broader, with dark hair and black eyes. She threw her arms around Gerda and said, "They shall not kill you, so long as you are not naughty. Aren't you a princess?" No, said Gerda, and she told all that had happened to her and how dearly she loved little Kay. Unfazed by the murder of all of her helpers.
This poor kid, oh my god.
The robber girl looked at her very seriously and nodded her head, saying, "They shall not kill you, even if you are naughty, for then I will kill you myself."
What?
Yep. And she dried Gerda's eyes and stuck both her hands in the beautiful warm muff. The little robber girl took Gerda to a corner of the robber's camp where she slept. All round were more than 100 wood pigeons, which seemed to be asleep, but they moved a little when the two girls came near. There was also nearby a reindeer, which the robber girl teased by tickling it with her long, sharp knife. They've all got long, sharp knives.
What the fuck?
Gerda lay awake for some time. Traumatized. I added that.
Yeah.
Coo-coo, said the wood pigeons.
Let's see, little Kay. A white bird carried his sledge. He was sitting in the Snow Queen's carriage, which drove over the forest when our little ones were in the nest. She breathed on them, and all except we two died. Coo-coo.
Whoa.
What are you saying?
Suddenly a lot of death in this story.
It's an old tale. What are you saying over there? Cried Gerda. Where was the Snow Queen going to you? Do you know it all?
She was probably traveling to Lapland, where there was always ice and snow. Ask the reindeer.
There is capital ice and snow there, said the reindeer. One can jump about there in the great sparkling valleys. There the Snow Queen has her summer palace. But her best palace is up by the North Pole on the island called Spitsbergen.
Santa Claus?
Okay, my little Kay, sobbed Gerda.
I like this reindeer.
You must lie still,
said the little robber girl, or I shall stick my knife into you. In the morning, Gerda told her all that the wood pigeons had said. She nodded. Do you know where Lapland is? She asked the reindeer. Who should know better than I, said the beast, and his eyes sparkled. Oh, sorry. Who should know better than I, said the beast, and his eyes sparkled. I was born and bred there on the snowfields.
I like how jovial and energetic he is.
He's an old-timey kind of guy, you see?
Listen, said the robber girl to Gerda. You see that all the robbers have gone, only my mother is left, and she will fall asleep in the afternoon. Then I will do something for you. When her mother had fallen asleep, the robber girl went up to the reindeer and said, I'm going to set you free, so that you can run to Lapland. But you must go quickly and carry this little girl to the Snow Queen's palace, where her playfellow is. You must have heard all that she told about it, for she spoke loud enough. The reindeer sprang high for joy. The robber girl lifted little Gerda up and had the foresight to tie her on firmly, and even gave her a little pillow for a saddle. You must have your fur boots, she said, for it will be cold, but I shall keep your muff, for it is so cozy. But so that you may not freeze, here are my mother's great fur gloves. They will come up to your elbows. Creep into them.
Creep into them.
Creep into them. And Gerda
creep into these gloves, man.
Creep into my gloves.
And Gerda cried for joy. Don't make such faces, said the little robber girl. You must look very happy. And here are 2 loaves and a sausage. Now you won't be hungry. It'll make it all,
so
make it all the way to Lapland. She went from threatening to kill her to being like, here, I'll help you. They were tied to the reindeer, and the little robber girl opened the door, made all the big dogs come away, cut through the halter with her sharp knife, and said to the reindeer, Run now, but take great care of the little girl. And Gerda stretched out her hands with the large fur gloves toward the little robber girl and said, Goodbye! Then the reindeer flew over the ground through the great forest as fast as he could. The wolves howled, the ravens screamed, the sky seemed on fire. Those are my dear old northern lights, said the reindeer. See how they shine! And then he ran faster still, day and night. The loaves were eaten and the sausage also. And then they came to Lapland. So in terms of distance here, we're talking 2 loaves and 1 sausage length. They stopped by a wretched little house. The roof almost touched the ground, and the door was so low that you had to creep in and out. There was no one in the house except an old Lapland woman who was cooking fish over an oil lamp. I've got to share the illustration of the robber girl sending Gerda off on the reindeer. There she is. Lovely.
I like her.
you know, she's a character.
I think she's a good egg.
I think she's supposed to be sort of, I think, Mongolian from this image.
Oh.
They're really going all over the place.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense for the location.
Yeah, sort of like Western Asia. The reindeer. So there's an old lady cooking fish. The reindeer told Gerda's whole history, but first he told his own, for that seemed to him much more important, and Gerda was so cold that she could not speak.
Oh.
Ah, you poor creatures, said the Lapland woman. You have still further to go. You must go over 100 miles into Finland, for there the Snow Queen lives, and every night she burns Bengal lights. I will write some words on a dried stockfish, for I have no paper. Don't judge her. She makes do with what she has.
shall write some words on an old fish.
I will
On
write
a
some words
stockfish.
on a dried stockfish. Country girls make do.
Oh boy. Okay.
That means nothing aside from what you would think it means.
What?
I have no paper. And don't look that up. And you must give it to the Finland woman, for she can give you better advice than I can. Look, moving on. We got the fish with some words on it. We got it from the Lapland woman. We're gonna go to Finland 100 miles, and then we gotta give the fish to the Finland woman. It's like any normal video game quest. And when Gerda was warmed and had something,
it's just like in Twilight Princess when you have to bring the fish. You know, you have to catch the fish.
That's exactly what this is. Actually, Hans Christian Andersen wrote Twilight Princess, so that makes sense.
Hans Christian Andersen actually traveled to the future and then stole from Nintendo.
Yes, that's entirely accurate. When Gerda was warmed and had something to eat and drink, and the Lapland woman wrote on a dried stockfish and begged Gerda to take care of it, tied Gerda securely on the reindeer's back, and away they went again. The whole night was ablaze with northern lights, and then they came to Finland and knocked at the Finland woman's chimney. For door she had none. Unclear how they get in then. She didn't have a door.
How'd they reach the chimney?
Don't worry about it. Inside it was so hot that the Finland woman wore very few clothes. She loosened Gerda's clothes and drew off her fur gloves and boots. She laid a piece of ice on the reindeer's head and then read what was written on the stockfish. She read it over 3 times till she knew it by heart, and then put the fish in the saucepan, for she never wasted anything. Look at that. Recycle.
I mean, hey, why not?
Reduce, reuse, recycle. Then the reindeer told his story, and afterward little Gerda's, and the Finland woman blinked her eyes, but said nothing. You were very clever, said the reindeer. I know. Cannot you give the little girl a drink, so that she may have the strength of 12 men, and overcome the Snow Queen?
Huh?
The Finland woman's gonna have the same voice as the Lapland woman.
The strength of 12 men, said the Finland woman. That would be too much. Little Kay is with the Snow Queen, and he likes everything there very much, and thinks it is the best place in the world. But that is because he has a splinter of glass in his heart and a bit in his eye. How does this random woman know? Also, hang on, I just gotta go back for a second, and the implication is there is a single Finland woman in Finland.
There's only one woman in Finland, Annika.
Yeah, and she doesn't have a door, only a chimney. He has a splinter.
And her house is very hot.
It's very hot. She doesn't wear a lot of clothes. They don't have a picture. Sorry. If these splinters do not come out, he will never be free, and the Snow Queen will keep her power over him.
But can't you give little Gerda something so that she can have power over her?
I can give her no greater power than she has already. Don't you see how great it is? Don't you see how men and beasts must help her when she wanders into the wild world with her bare feet? She is powerful already, because she is a dear little innocent child. If she cannot by herself conquer the Snow Queen and take away the glass splinters from little Kay, we cannot help her. The Snow Queen's garden begins 2 miles from here.
Ma'am?
You can carry
That's
the
a
little maiden.
baby you're talking to.
You can carry the little maiden so far. Put her down by the large bush with red berries growing in it in the snow. Then you must come back here as fast as you can. Then the Finland woman lifted little Gerda on the reindeer, and away he sped. Oh, I have left my gloves and boots behind, cried Gerda.
Oh no.
Barefoot in Finland.
In the winter.
She missed them in the piercing cold, but the reindeer did not dare to stop. On he ran till he came to the bush with red berries. Then he set Gerda down.
The kid's gonna get frostbite.
Oh, I don't like this next sentence. Then he set Gerda down and kissed her mouth, and great big tears ran down his cheeks, and then he ran back. Sir.
Reindeer.
There stood
No.
poor little Gerda.
Don't do that.
Without shoes or gloves, in the middle of the bitter cold of Finland. That's the line. I didn't make that up. It sounded like I could have.
Hey, reindeer, what the fuck?
Hey, he's just doing what the Finland lady said to do. She ran on.
Finland lady, what the fuck?
I know. She ran on as fast as she could. A regiment of gigantic snowflakes came against her, but they melted when they touched her, and she went on with fresh courage. And now we must see what Kay was doing. Pfft, we haven't seen that this whole time.
Oh yeah, him.
He was not thinking of Gerda, and never dreamt she was standing outside the palace. Thanks, Kay. The walls of the palace were built of driven snow, and the doors and windows of piercing winds. There were more than 100 halls in it, all of frozen snow. The largest was several miles long. The bright northern lights lit them up, and very large and empty and cold and glittering they were. It's a lot. In the middle of the great hall was a frozen lake, which cracked into 1,000 pieces. Each piece was exactly like the other. Here the Snow Queen used to sit when she was at home. Little Kay was almost blue and black with cold, but he did not feel it, for she had kissed away his feelings, and his heart was a lump of ice.
Kay, no.
He was pulling about some sharp, flat pieces of ice, and trying to fit one into the other. He thought each was most beautiful, but that was because of the splinter of glass in his eye. He fitted them into a great many shapes, but he wanted them to spell the word love. The Snow Queen had said, if you can spell out that word, you shall be your own master. I will give you the whole world and a new pair of skates. But he could not do it.
Oh,
now
that's a metaphor.
I don't think it's a metaphor. I think it's just like blatant. Very
it's
obvious
symbolism.
imagery. It's slap you in the face symbolism.
I didn't say it was subtle.
That's true. Now I must fly to warmer countries, said the Snow Queen. I must go and powder my black kettles. This was what she called Mount Etna and Mount Vesuvius. It does the lemons and the grapes good. Lady likes her lemons and grapes. And off she flew, and Kay sat alone in the great hall, trying to do his puzzle. He sat so still, you would have thought he was frozen. Let it go, let it go.
Stop.
Then it happened that little Gerda stepped into the hall. The biting cold winds became quiet, as if they had fallen asleep when she appeared in the great, empty, freezing hall. She caught sight of Kay. She recognized him, ran and put her arms around his neck, crying, Kay, dear little Kay, I have found you at last. But he sat quite still and cold. Then Gerda wept hot tears, which fell on his neck and thawed his heart, and swept away the bit of the looking-glass. He looked at her, and then he burst into tears. He cried so much that the glass splinter swam out of his eye. Then he knew her, and cried out, Gerda! Dear little Gerda, where have you been so long? And where have I been?
This poor kid.
And he looked around him. How cold it is here! How wide and empty! And he threw himself on Gerda, and she laughed and wept for joy. There they are. Gerda's crying on him.
Oh.
It was such a happy time that the pieces of ice even danced round them for joy. And when they were tired and lay down again, they formed himself into the letters that the Snow Queen had said he must spell in order to become his own master and have the whole world and a new pair of skates.
Yay, skates too!
And Gerda kissed his cheeks and they grew rosy. She kissed his eyes and they sparkled like hers. Just straight on the eyeball, not on the outside, on the actual eyeball.
Oh, yeah. Okay, keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open.
She kissed his hands and feet and he became warm and glowing. The Snow Queen might come home now. His release, the word love, stood written in sparkling ice. They took each other's hands and wandered out of the great palace. They talked about the grandmother and the roses on the leads, and wherever they came, the winds hushed and the sun came out. When they reached the bush with red berries, there stood the reindeer waiting for them. He carried Kay and Gerda
Yay.
first to the Finland woman, who warmed them in her hot room and gave them advice for their journey home. Then they went to the Lapland woman, who gave them new clothes and mended their sleigh. Which they somehow have a sleigh
Their
now.
sleigh.
They did not.
Oh yeah, the bird carried it, but they didn't say that they got it back.
The bird carried it. When did the bird
The
carry it?
When Kay first left, he was like, "Oh, my sled!"
Right. Oh my god. His little sledge, which is just like a sled. Well,
Yeah,
whatever.
it's something.
The reindeer ran with them till they came to the green fields, fresh with the spring green. That does say green twice. Here he said goodbye. He doesn't say anything though, so I don't get to have his voice back. They came to the forest, which was bursting into bud, and out of it came a splendid horse, which Gerda knew. It was one which had drawn the gold coach ridden by a young girl with a red cap on and pistols in her belt. It was the little robber girl, who was tired of being at home and wanted to go out in the world.
Oh,
She and Gerda knew each other at once. "You're such a nice fellow," she said to Kay. "I should like to know if you deserve to be run after all over the world." But Gerda patted her cheeks and asked after the prince and princess. "They're traveling about," said the robber girl. "And the crow?" said Gerda. "Oh, the crow's dead," answered the robber girl. "His tame sweetheart is a widow and hops about with a bit of black crape round her leg. She makes a great fuss."
Wait, really?
"She makes a great fuss, but it's all nonsense. But tell me what happened to you and how you caught him."
Wait, are you serious? The crow died?
"They don't live
Off
very
screen?
long." Off screen? Yeah. All it took was like a couple weeks. And Kay
I'm
and
gonna
Gerda
cry.
told her all. "Dear, dear," said the robber girl, shook both their hands and promised if she came to their town she would come and see them. Then she rode on. But Gerda and Kay went home hand in hand. There they found the grandmother, and everything just as it had been. But when they went through the doorway, they found they were grown up. There were roses on the leads. It was summer. Warm, glorious summer. End of story.